name is Sheridan Ruth, and I am here to welcome you home. This is the Exposed podcast. Where we reveal the body-based ways to ease anxiety, heal trauma, and create an empowered connection with love and money using nervous system regulation and a healthy dose of self-compassion. Hello, today we have a discussion with Andrea Hunt around EFT tapping and creating confidence through moving through limiting beliefs. Andrea Hunt supports people experiencing imposter syndrome that blocks them from being confident and really going after her dreams. She does specialize particularly in the expat digital nomad life and living abroad, which is a really wonderful experience if you ever get a chance. She has been an expat on and off for the last 25 years and lived in 6 countries in addition to the United States. She's a natural motivator and helps people empower themselves to live up in their lives. If you're expanding into the version of yourself that can do these amazing big things and bounce back from all of the big stresses of life, including the little ones, and feel more confident in yourself and your decisions and creating the life that you're desiring to. Before we move on to the episode, I do want to invite you to come onto www.sheridanruth.com/expansion and book your free 30-minute expansion call with me so that we can understand what specific support you need for your personal situation and what specific and tangible action items you need to walk away with from this call. If it feels like a fit for us both, we'll also explore whether or not working through my ease framework is going to be the best solution for you right now. So go ahead, you'll find that link in the show notes. I will see you sitting in front of me on Zoom. I am looking forward to it. Now let's get into the episode. Andrea, welcome to Exposed. I'm really excited to have you, and I'm excited for today's episode, which is going to be very potent and really, really good. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, wonderful. So I think we had a really good conversation so far, and I'm excited to let our beautiful listeners in on it. I have a couple of questions for you, and I think what would be really lovely to hear before we do that is, you kind of started explaining this earlier, but I really love to know, like, how did you end up in this realm of anxiety healing, EFT tapping, belief work, emotions work? What brought you here?
So I guess I should start a little bit about myself in terms of my own anxiety. I found EFT tapping about 10 years ago, and I was studying for my master's exams, and I got to a point where I was so anxious. I was just, panicking. I was pacing around. I was like, I don't know what to do. I couldn't calm myself down. For a lot of anxious people, just being like, okay, try some breath works. Like, that was not an option for me. And I had heard of EFT tapping, and I was like, okay, at this point, I would do absolutely anything to calm down because I couldn't focus, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I was literally like making myself sick with all of the fear and worry and anxiety that I was creating. And so I found this Brad Yates tapping for like fear and panic. I think that was the name.
Yeah, he's really good.
I love it. And I was just like, okay, you know what? It can't hurt. I am willing to do anything that I possibly can. I had already tried yoga. I tried walking around, but I just couldn't shut off my brain and distract it long enough to ground myself. So I tried the video and I was like, okay, take my emotional, 0 to 10. And I was pretty much through the roof at that moment. And so once I found it, after one round, I'm like, oh, God, I feel calmer. How can this be? I've just been doing this because I thought it looked kind of funny. Admittedly, it was I don't know, tapping on my face. That just seemed a little weird to me. but I was like, you know what, if it helps, then go ahead. So I did it. And I mean, basically after 3 rounds, I was like totally calm again. And so I was like hooked after that. And so like I just kind of started looking into more of his videos. And so over the years, it's just become such an important tool because I am somebody who has the tendency to kind of overthink things, get stressed, get worried before a certain, like an
Mm-hmm.
interview or a job presentation. And so that was so helpful for me. So once I became a coach, and I was telling you my unlucky story earlier, like it was such a weird, like the end of 2019 and 2020 was just such a weird year for everybody. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. But for me, like, I had this really good job. I was doing, communications at a company, and basically they shut down 3 of the departments, at my company. So like 80 of us all lost our jobs in one day. So I suddenly found myself like, okay, you know what? Like, I feel like this is an opportunity where I could actually go into coaching because I've been thinking about it for a while. Like, I've always been into personal growth, and like I've, overcome a lot of my own things, through these workshops, through coaching and stuff like that. But I got another job offer like right away. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm safe. Like I'm gonna put away this idea for a while. And so several months later, because I had got that new job, COVID hit. So unfortunately, like so many people around the world, like this is, not a unique story, obviously, but I also got laid off because I was, one of the first hires, like at the beginning of the year. So suddenly I
Mm-hmm.
was like, all right, I feel like this is my opportunity, like where I can actually really, really do this. Like I want to be more in control of, my own profession and my life and do something that matters to me and where I have purpose. And I've always been like a people person. I'm always, kind of like the motivator on the team and stuff like that. So it just was kind of a natural segue for me. So I mean, I got certified, and as I was saying before, like I would be like in some of the coaching sessions, I'm like, oh my god, like I know that this limiting belief that this person had, I know that I could fix this if I could use EFT. But of course, I mean, you need to be certified and stuff like that. You can't just go trying things on people. So
And I
I,
think like we need to highlight that because this is one of, I think EFT is a tool that seems like relatively, breathwork and EFT are those tools where it's like, oh, this seems really simple, but I really want to highlight the necessity to be working with somebody who has an extensive or at least foundational training in this because we're working with really sensitive parts of your body, your breath, your
Mhm,
emotions, your energy. And so, like, just little disclaimer for everyone, it's really important to work with somebody who knows what they're doing.
mhm. Absolutely, because things can come up, I mean, and it's like sometimes it's like, tangled Christmas lights, I always call it. You might pull one and then like some other things are attached to that.
That's a good
So
metaphor.
I was like, because you're like, oh God, I had forgotten about this situation. And then there was this, and like something that, it's all a big tangle. But so that's how I started, integrating EFT. And at the beginning, I was kind of like, maybe I should offer them separately, because people don't really know what EFT is. And finally, I was like, no, like I think that this is so valuable. Like I'm just going to make my packages with both, and people can do it. And I had been getting really good feedback from workshops and stuff from people who would never have tried EFT in their life if it weren't for being at that workshop about limiting beliefs. And they were just like, okay, let's try it. And the reactions afterwards were just amazing to me. I mean, because, people sometimes, they cry. There's this emotional release that comes sometimes with being able to clear something. And yeah, so that's, I mean, that kind of brings me up to currently. So that's what I've been doing the last 3 years.
Yeah, amazing, 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 amazing. Um, okay, so we do have an episode 5, which talks about like what is EFT and what it does. So we're not going to cover that today because if you want, you can listen to this and then go back to that. What I want to talk to you about today, Andrea, is we kind of have this foundation. I actually want to kind of like segue, and this will make sense, beautiful listener, in a moment. I want you to talk to us a little bit about our beliefs and how they impact our anxiety and why, if you're a person who identifies maybe as sensitive or anxious, or you just
Mhm.
experience those moments of anxiety, like why it's important to address and understand and get really curious about the foundational beliefs that we're holding.
Mhm. Well, first of all, like just to use a very simple example that most people could probably understand, like if you let's say that you were 8 years old and you started, you went up to the front of the class and then you was trying to show your drawing or something like that to the rest of the class. Let's say the teacher makes a really snide comment, maybe says something that like kind of mocks you a little bit, and let's say that everybody laughs at it. So suddenly the belief that you're learning at that time, with your 8-year-old brain is it's not safe to be seen. People are going to
Mhm.
judge me. People are going to criticize me. And I'm not going to put myself out in public, put myself like expose myself in any way. So then the thing is that you might go out later in life, and you keep trying things and trying things, but in the back of your head, you still have this belief. And maybe you've even
Mhm.
created the belief that you're not good enough. Or, like other people can be confident and go, public speaking or go to social events, but not me, because I have proof, because in your brain you've created that belief that you have evidence that you're not good at those things. So then, like, let's say 20 years later you're in a meeting and your boss is like, oh, why don't you show the client like presentation or the PowerPoint, and suddenly all of this fear and anxiety just grips you like instantly, and you suddenly can like feel all the panic that you felt, as an 8-year old, remembering how humiliated you felt, how maybe ashamed and guilty. And so, with EFT, you can use it for two different ways, because the first one is like, knowing that you have that belief, like you can obviously manage your emotional health with EFT, like let's say you have an
Mhm.
interview. You can do the EFT beforehand to kind of ground yourself and get yourself into a calm place.
Mhm.
But also like as a reactive tool, like let's say you already feel all this fear and anxiety, like you need something to calm yourself down right now, not later. That's one another component. And then of course the most important is like actually addressing the limiting beliefs by, instilling a more positive belief. Kind of I always, the other analogy that I like is like if you kind of just say positive affirmations, but you haven't done all the clearing of the negativity, it's kind of like polishing a dirty plate. Like,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
you can look in the mirror and be like, I'm confident, I'm a great speaker, all you want. But if in the back of your head you've got all this self-doubt, these like, negative limiting beliefs that are like, no, you're not. Like, who are you kidding? You don't know what you're doing. It's not safe. They're all going to laugh at you. Um, so that's why it's important to actually get to kind of the root causes of these beliefs so that you can clear those, that situation, that memory, take away the emotional charge so that you can put a more positive belief on top.
yeah. I always think about that. I think affirmations are really good. I like to think of affirmations as almost like a compass, because you can kind of say affirmations, you can test yourself. You can say affirmations, and then you can do this somatic inquiry of like, which of these affirmations feels the stickiest or the weirdest, or I have the
Mm,
most resistance to, because then that's like, oh, okay, bing, 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 bing. That's what we need to go and focus our energy on. It's not like we just want to convince ourselves of these things. It's like, oh, that's what we're going to go focus our energy on. And that's what we're going to understand and get, like you say, get to the root cause. Because if we
mhm.
don't, well, that's just like really spinning your wheels, but you're not really getting anywhere.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I think, this really, what you're saying, Andrea, I love this um example. And beautiful listeners, I want you to also think about like, what did you learn from your parents about love? Like, what did you see about the way that your
Mm,
dad responded to your mom when your mom expressed a desire? Or what did you see when your brother wanted to purchase something, and how did they respond about money? And therefore, what did you learn about money? Or people who go after their dreams. What did you learn about education? Like, what were your parents and the people around you? What types of education were they celebrating? What types of
mm.
education were they not really valuing? Um, or what was possible for you? So you can get really, really, really curious about all of these things that as a kid you just assumed that that was the truth of the world because you were a kid, and that's what you do when you're a kid. Your brain is made to do that because of the different brain waves that you have. But now that you're here and you're an adult, we can get really curious and we can say, all right, okay, so I thought that was true then. That made sense then. That made sense at that time in this context. Now, yeah, it's actually not supportive to me because I want to do the presentation. I want to have the relationship. I want to make the money. I want to do this education or accept people, I don't know, whatever it is, who don't. So yeah, that's a really, really good example. So Andrea, can you explain a little bit about so we have like affirmations I think help us understand our limiting beliefs, but like how would you know that you have a limiting belief? Is it just the anxiety? Is it just affirmations or something? What else, what other types of inquiry can we use?
One of the quickest ways is like look at your I am statements that you're telling yourself. Like, and one of the easiest ways is like take a list of like 5 things of like, I'm the kind of person who, you know, I'm not the kind of person who, like I'm the kind of person who is lazy. I'm the kind of person who procrastinates. I am a procrastinator. Like every time we say these I am statements, it's kind of reaffirming whatever negative belief. So look at the positive list, like make 3 positive like beliefs that you have about yourself. Like I'm a kind person. I'm a generous person. And then really think about like when you try to say things like I'm confident, usually there's a little voice in your head that says like no, you're not, or no, but or whatever, and listen to what those are and write them down because those are usually your limiting beliefs. Like the ways that you criticize yourself, the ways when you say like I'm lovable and the little voice is like no, you're not because you're whatever it is.
Yeah. One thing that I also like to add to that, this is really good, but as you're speaking, I'm thinking I see my clients' beliefs in their I can and I can't statements. So whenever somebody
Mm-hmm.
is like to me, I can't get calm, I'm like, well, that's a belief. I can't
Then
make a
you won't.
decision. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you won't. You won't.
Yeah.
If you keep telling yourself that you can't do something, well, it would be really weird for you to suddenly be able. If I tell myself like, I can't drink tea, I can't drink tea, I can't drink tea, obviously I'm not going to go and drink some tea because now I believe that I can't drink it. So,
Yeah.
and that's a very simple explanation, but it is the way it is. So all of the things that you say to yourself where you're like, I can't do that, that's a
Yeah.
limiting belief.
And most importantly, like we go around collecting evidence to validate our own beliefs, whether it's
Yeah.
helpful or not. So if we say something like the example that you just gave, like, oh, I can't do that, like I'm really bad at math or something like that, then of course you are. Like you've already done it. So like let's say that you tried to do, I don't know, some math of bills or whatever, and you mess it up, and then you're like, see, told you, I knew it. Like of course it's not helpful or empowering, but sometimes like until we understand that that's often our automatic response and correct it and be like, okay, wait, it doesn't have to be that I'm bad at math. You can correct the belief to be like, I am learning to do math better, or I am learning to be the kind of person who takes deliberate action instead of procrastinating. Replacing those
Yeah.
those I am or I'm not with something that's more helpful, and just consciously being able to correct yourself is so important. You can do
Yeah.
it all day long.
Is that like when you talked about earlier, finding something more empowering or replacing that belief? Is that what that process would be? Just the way that you would describe it?
Absolutely. Like figure out like, so if you're whatever your negative belief is, like what's the opposite? If you were going to be the opposite of that negative thing that you just described, what would that look like? So instead of like, yeah, I'm bad at math. Okay, no, I'm learning to do math. And then like what action could you take so that you can validate that instead? Because, confidence is not a light switch. We don't, it's very rare that most of us are just born with confidence. Sure, some people are, but that's kind of not most of us. For
See,
most people,
Andrea, I disagree completely with that. Like, I just have to say, I think you're so wrong. We're so born with confidence, and then the world gets in the way and tells us that we shouldn't like you think about a baby. It's like, I'm gonna figure out how to walk, and then it falls down, and mom and dad are like, oh, are you
oh,
okay? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we are born with
yeah,
confidence, and then pretty much immediately the world starts kind of telling us what we can and can't do and what's good and what's bad. And
Wow.
we think that we need something, but then mom and dad are like, no, you actually don't need that. And you're like, oh, wait, was I wrong? It can't be mom and dad. And that's where we create this self-doubt. Like, but
That
I
is a
truly
really good
think that we
point.
are.
Yeah, that is a really good point. So then I think maybe it's relearning, that that confidence, And I always think that like one of the easier way to do that is to create little bits of evidence for yourself, just stepping out your comfort zone just a little bit so that you can like do it. It's kind of like you wouldn't go to the gym like one time and then be like, okay, so do I have a six pack yet? I mean, like obviously you can you can go home and look in the mirror, but you're gonna be quite disappointed. Whereas like, if you do a little bit more every day, then you can start seeing the results and you can kind of gauge your progress. So next time a situation comes up where before you would have been really fearful, worried, or anxious about it, you can be like, okay, you know what? I have an example of where I stepped out of my comfort zone and I did it and it worked. And I'm going to think about that instead of all of the 50 million things that like could go wrong in the situation instead to create all of this, fear and panic for myself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that when I started creating evidence and I would literally write down, I was like 10 things. I mean, you can start with two, you can start with three, but whenever I'm really working with belief, I will write down 10 things that occurred that day that are supportive evidence for the belief. And I've done this for my partner. I was so convinced that he didn't love me because I wasn't used to getting love. And so I was like, okay, he says he loves me, but for some reason, and like he's doing things that like people do when they love someone, but for some reason, because of my experiences in life, I
Mm.
couldn't trust that. So I did this practice like for like a year. I wrote down at the end of every day 10 things that I did more general. I was like 10 reasons that people love me and that I'm like I'm a lovable being. And yeah, it really works. I don't do that anymore because it's not necessary. Maybe I could start again. That would be really interesting. But your brain needs evidence. Your
Hmm.
conscious brain needs to be able to say, yeah, you're right. Actually, we have evidence for this thing. That's such a good point. Everyone
Hmm.
listen to Andrea.
Well, because a lot of times, like when I ask some of my clients, I'm like, okay, so when's the time that you did that thing and you were confident about it? They're like, well, actually, yeah, last month I gave a presentation at work and it was really good. I'm like, okay, so how come that's not the thing that you're looking back on, for the next one? Instead of like thinking of like, oh my God, if I get up there, then they're gonna laugh, and then I'm sure the technology is gonna mess up, and I'm sure that like, because the more negative kind of what ifs that you create, the more you're just going to fill yourself with fear and worry. I mean, I literally in some of my tapping rounds, I go through like I make somebody like get it all out. Like, okay, what if they laugh at me? What if everything goes wrong? What if the projector fails? What if
Mm,
just get it all out, because we all have like 100 of those what if situations that could possibly happen, or we think that they could possibly happen, right? And once you've gotten them out of your system and kind of tapped with it to release that negative energy, then when you're going into the situation you won't have all of those.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So how do we take this information now and how do we link that in with EFT tapping practices?
So the easiest way that I always tell people, like, if you just really want to try it out, as I said, Brad Yates is amazing. He literally has thousands and thousands of videos for like a whole range of emotions. So if you want to get started with EFT, it's really good for your emotional health and regulations. I mean, you can use it when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're unmotivated, um, scared, worried, whatever it is. It's super, super useful in a wide variety of settings as a reactive thing. And then there's, of course, as I said, like the preventative measure, using it as part of your morning routine. Like Brad Yates also has one called Amazing Day Quickie. Love it. I do that literally every day. And it's a really good way just to kind of put yourself in a grounded, centered place going into your day. But then if you really want to like look at the issues and the beliefs that are kind of contributing to this fear and worry and anxiety that you might have accumulated over the years, that's where it's good to work with a practitioner where they can actually yeah, help you to clear those beliefs. And it's kind of like, I mean, it's not like a one and done thing. Like it depends on what the belief is, because remember, like if you've worked on, or not worked on, but if you've created this belief like your whole life, it's kind of like an onion. So in the center, you have this core belief that you made about yourself, but then you have all these layers of experiences validating that, you know? So like I said, with the public speaking thing, maybe let's say you didn't feel like it was safe to go and put yourself out there, and like you were at, I don't know, you were at a social event and you went to go talk to somebody who was really important, and let's say that that person completely ignored you and you felt like really ashamed and stupid. So then you just added like another layer to that core belief as you part of your evidence. So those are the kind of individual situations that we need to clear in order to get to the center. But I mean, it's definitely helpful, even if you know, can work with a practitioner like one time on one of the beliefs, like you do feel
Mm,
better. And it can be really, like I said, very cleansing. And you know, it can be very emotional for people, especially when it's a belief like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, people don't like me, all of the core very negative beliefs and wounds that kind of hurt our self-esteem.
yeah, I think probably most of our beliefs come from our perception of ourselves. When we get really down to the core, it comes
Yep.
down to those little things like deservability, value, shame. And there are
Mm-hmm.
so many branches, like there are so many ways that it appears. We have so many beliefs and we live by so many different truths about the world. If you really were to look at the maps in our mind, like that's an insane amount of beliefs. But a lot of it comes back to those initial beliefs that we
Mm-hmm.
established around what you're good at, what you're not good at, your value, your position in the world, and what those really, really core, tender, loving parts of ourselves. So Andrea, that's what you do, right? Is that
Yep.
people can reach
Yep,
out
that's what
to
I
you
do.
to do that? Yes.
Yes,
Andrea is your
that's what I
woman.
help you with.
Andrea is your woman. If you're really looking, you guys know that I am a big believer in one-on-one work. I think it just makes so much more sense. But you save yourself so much time and energy and money in the long run
Mm,
instead of trying to workshop things oftentimes with yourself, especially with these really core things. Because like
mm,
our minds are made so that it is actually quite difficult for us to see our blind spots. It's just the
mm.
nature of the mind. And sometimes you really do need a person in front of you to be able to say, hey, wait a second. Before we wrap this episode up, I'm going to take a few minutes to share with you an invitation that will support you in taking this work deeper. There could be various reasons why you're here listening today. Perhaps you are a client, a friend, or a colleague. Maybe we just found each other, or maybe we've known each other for a while. What I know to be true is that you're likely here because you're ready to develop the tools to bounce back from the difficulties of life quickly and with more ease by having the tools to regulate your nervous system and find inner peace instead of inner conflict for good. You know that you are ready to say goodbye to the nagger inner critic voice telling you how you should be or getting stuck in the endless what ifs of anxiety. You're ready to know how to set boundaries with your loved ones in a way that increases the love, trust, and connection and doesn't just feel like isolating walls. And you are ready to finally increase your resilience and your body's ability to feel more in control of your big emotions without trying to manipulate them so that you can find your innate wisdom. You're ready to finally celebrate the growth of your relationship or your business without experiencing shame and guilt, even though you're experiencing quicker success than those around you. I support all of my clients in this through a framework of nervous system regulation, emotional alchemy, and self-trust cultivation. And this podcast is just the tip of the iceberg. This is why I'm extending an invitation for you to book a free expansion call, where on this call, we will dive even deeper into exactly what you need to go from feeling overwhelmed, managing big emotions, and falling into anxiety or depression as a result, to having the tools to regulate them quickly and with ease. In this free 30-minute call, you will receive free coaching and support around your unique personal situation. And we will explore whether or not coaching is going to be the best fit for you at this time. Some of the results that Some of the results the clients have achieved after just their expansion call are deep acceptance of their differences, so much that when they share their story now, they attribute most of their self-acceptance to this one 30-minute call, or signing a client right after the call because they leaned into the embodiment work, or feeling deeply seen and understood, so much that now when they go to ask their partner for a hug, they no longer feel needy when they're doing it and they get the hug. Or switching one habit that they had when communicating with their partner for another and witnessing more harmony and peace in the relationship instead of resentment and nitpicking. And you deserve this too. So you will find the link in the podcast notes to lock your free call in ASAP. When you book this call, you can expect to walk away with clear, tangible ideas on how to apply this work to your life, and you'll decide if you would like to work with me one-on-one in the process of becoming more resilient and regulated. What's happening here? And that's really the value of this work. So guys, Andrea would be really, really wonderful at helping you through that with EFT. Yeah. Is there anything that you want to share before we wrap up?
No, at the moment, that's it. I'm going to be trying to do maybe some kind of group workshops and stuff like that coming up in the future. And also, I was going to be doing some group like live EFT tapping maybe twice a month. And I'm just going to have like a different issue, like maybe on Monday it would be like self-love. And then I would have one maybe on stress and anxiety, and then one on maybe, relationships or like worthiness or just different topics. So that'll be coming up. So you can follow me on social media or check my website if you want to.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'll make sure that all of the links are down below in the show notes, so you can like literally start clicking on that now while you listen to us wrap this up. Wonderful, beautiful listener. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today, for committing to your process and your journey and your path moving forward in the world. Andrea, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
A big and special thanks to Upturned for composing this magical piece of music, and to GS Studios for mixing it. To find Upturned's other tracks or ask for your own special custom piece of music, go say hello using their contact details in the show notes.